everyone, welcome to the July Planning Committee. Local Planning Committee, it's good to see everyone. Is everyone doing okay?
Fighting the fight. We're good.
Hip, hip, hooray.
It's great to see you. Welcome, Duncan. We're glad you're here.
Duncan.
Welcome, welcome. We're kind of, I think the first order of business is to get a motion to adopt last month's minutes.
So moved.
Any discussion? All right, we have no one participating online. So we can just say aye?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great. I can actually, a little bit an aside, a little bit of discussion about the minutes. Barbara has done a spectacular job of the minutes. It is not easy. There to be, and I went with our wonderful town clerk. It's a very specific, high, nerdy bar to make the minutes, quote, compliant. So there's a little work that the minutes are excellent, but there's a few more dots.
Formatting.
Yes, to be 100% compliant, even though, like, the spirit of the minutes are excellent. So I am going through them in some of the YouTube videos and just, like, making them perfect. And I will resubmit them, and I will CC you all. I don't think we necessarily have to formally revote on all of them, but we'll make you aware.
Okay.
Just FYI, if you hear about that.
I just finished 2 years of doing it for the library.
Okay, so we're not alone.
No, but what I always
Yes.
did is I drew up a template based on the agenda, and it
Yeah.
helped me to just.
Yeah, yep. There's a few just nuance. We're doing it, but just as we're finishing, hopefully, this
Okay.
process.
Right.
Did you have to get anything reapproved, or was it just mostly formats?
Did I have to what?
Did your board have to reapprove every, no, it was just
No.
formatting?
Yep. And for the library, I just submit them to the executive assistant, and then they would come in the next month's packet for us to approve them. And then they would, send them to town hall. I didn't have to do that.
For example, some of the things that, like, were dinged about, this is like, the meeting was called to order at 5:03, but we don't have what the time the meeting was booked for. I mean, like, very, very small stuff that this is, okay, sure, we can fix this, so that we're, yeah. And I don't think it warrants coming back on the agenda here.
Okay.
So, but I'll keep you in the loop by email. Cool. And then, next up, Duncan, we should not waste any time, so thank you. I think you're up on the agenda.
all right.
Next, welcome.
All right, well, thank you very much. Nice to be on this side of the table.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This is a
much-
very
lot less
friendly,
stress.
this is like all your, like, angsty meetings, this is not an angsty meeting for you.
Good.
Yeah.
It is not, and I'm thrilled about that. And I submitted some bit of, oh, thank you so much.
Yep.
Something just to be clipped on as an appendix if it desired. I think it would be a little bit of use, only because I think it performs the duty of a feedback loop that we didn't do officially as a planning board, but I think there's some planning material in here that covers what I call the customer's point of view. And customer's point of view being mine as a taxpayer, resident, homeowner, board member, somebody who used to teach this stuff like 30 years ago. Like, so I felt like I had a duty to kind of put something in, but I didn't think it was worth going against the remit that you all have for the town and for the Commonwealth. So I just thought the best way to do this would be to put stuff in here that might be of use in a future scenario that can be drawn out. So, and I think that one of the things that interested me, and first of all, is like, I haven't seen, I don't think the final LCP yet. So this is not in any way kind of a contingent on a future product or deliverable. It's kind of like a set of observations about having seen it, both as a board member and multiple times as a resident attending meetings and seeing the feedback. And so what it is done to perform a task. What I had in mind, though, is I think there are things here that we can work with in the future, and I'm hoping that there might be seeds here for future ways of enhancing the utilization or utility of the product that you're working on. So that's the
Love that.
premise.
Yeah.
And I really kind of like got to this point of view when at one of our board meetings, planning board meetings, a member of the public stood up and said, I wish we had a vision statement that we could all kind of figure out and get behind. I'm like, you know what, bingo, that's exactly what I've been thinking about. It was articulated something really well. And so that to me is, this vision business is what I'm looking at as a kind of as a customer, as your customer on multiple levels. So I wanted to talk about the objectives that the way I see the objectives playing out in your deliverable, the business of qualitative analysis, which I think is something which we can improve on as a community. It's something that we all kind of, it's hard to talk about, and that's why it's like not a measurable thing. It's not like a quantitative piece of data that we can all say, well, this is above that, and therefore it's higher, and therefore we value it less, or it's worse, or whatever. And this is a little more nuanced. And then the future things, considerations, and then as Ed noticed my bibliography for you all, quiz at 11. So the objectives, the way I understand it, obviously, this is a document that we've been remiss in submitting, and we're therefore not qualified for state funds.
Correct.
Like, this is like job number one, do our homework and get, so like, bravo, I'm glad we're all getting that done. That's, the other thing is, I think it's for us as people in serving on boards in the town, this is responsible stewardship. We've got to know what our inventory is and what we're doing and how we're managing our resources. And as a routine, kind of like hygienic thing of civic hygiene, just like every day you brush your teeth, or, you know, I try to, or whatever. It's like, we have to do this on a routine basis. And we, you know, as the planning board, we were behind. And in the planning department, years. So the idea of having the sound fact-based, building a platform so we can make future decisions, super important, and making sure that it was available to the public at large. To me, that's what the primary objectives are. I got no problem with them. I think it's all being taken care of. But I see that there's a conflict of not necessarily a conflict, there's a division between the emphasis of what the Commonwealth needs and what we need. The Commonwealth is looking with a focus on things and numbers, and we're looking at things as residents and neighbors. We deal with people and experience. These are incommensurable things to me. And so when our board deals with both sides of this thing, and I would love to see us as a town, and you know, however we do it, but I would love to see us be able to put more emphasis on people, experience, and qualitative nature of what Harwich-ness is. Like, what is the ethos of our town? Because that's the hard part. It's not going to be the number of light bulbs that we have in our street lamps, or the gallons of paint that get put down, you know, in the roadbed, or all the quantitative things. That's, you know, it's out there, but that's not going to help us. So this qualitative business is interesting because for those of you in business or marketing or finance, this first guy, Edward Stemming, you may have heard of him. He says, it's wrong to suppose that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. His famous thing is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Well, that's the thing. Can you measure your affection for your spouse? Because if you've got that on a spreadsheet, the chances are you've probably got something wrong in there, because this is not a quantifiable thing. And you know, I think this is part of the bias that we have built into the task it's set by the Commonwealth, is that we need to know the price of everything, but we're not really evaluating the value of things. So, and then the last one is strategy itself begins where hard, provable techniques leave off. This is where the town still has to get on top of this. And this is where, to me, our growth patterns are the conflicts that we see, the grinding of gears with new large housing projects, or, you know, putting in, you know, infrastructure. You know, there's the quantitative arguments go very far, but they don't, they shouldn't overwhelm our qualitative experience of living in Harwich. So this is where I think, where what we ought to be doing is as we go forward, we ought to be looking toward introducing that level 3 thinking of non-metric factors. And what that means is sensory experience, historical context, our own kind of local folk wisdom, and image-driven behavior. Image-driven behavior, and like, this is an example. And it's kind of like a weird thing to talk about, but in planning, there's a whole body of knowledge around this thing called thigmotaxis. That means wall-hugging behavior, that in public, when we walk, we tend to walk near walls, and we gravitate toward walls. And so when you have these spaces in civic areas where we have like a parking lot, people will go out of their way to walk down a parking lot, around a building and around. They're looking for a certain kind of experience. So this is one of these elements in the behavioral sciences that should be part of our set of considerations. And so, I think we ought to be integrating this stuff, these non-metric behavioral or human sciences, with what we're doing as a town when we're thinking about planning. Now, again, this isn't part of your remit, and I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying I think we all ought to be talking about this at some point, sooner rather than later. And the reason is that we have tools that are on the horizon now that are probably more familiar to us at the end of this process, like AI, than was at the beginning of this process. Like, I didn't really, my daughter was using AI like 2 years ago, and she started getting me dabbling with it. So in 2 years, I can't believe what's happened in the ability to analyze data that used to take me, let's say, 3 or 4 hours or 6 hours can be done in 20 seconds, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I think this is going to really change the way we think about our environment and our objectives and our priorities in really important ways. And I think that we have to actually be using that for our data and quantitative stuff as the base level, okay? Because we can get this stuff fast now. That means that the hard work of the thinking about this is where you can't sub out that stuff to an intelligence that doesn't have a pulse, that doesn't have pupils that dilate, or skin that contracts when it's cold. Like, this is us. That's where our ethos is and all that physical stuff. And I want us to get there. So my belief is that as we go forward and use the LCP, that we draw on it from a knowledge of our villages, because the way I look at it and the way I hope to have my board look at it, our town is essentially a constellation of different constituencies. And each, as a whole, to me, we're like a cross-section of all the Cape. There's no other town that has what we have in terms of industry, access to beaches, history, technology, the whole thing. It's just crazy. And I would love for us to be able to pull this forward, in our board, in the select board, as we move forward in the zoning board of appeals, that this is part of what changes the language of how we want Harwich to work for us as people that live here. I think that would be great. And the other thing, I'm the history guy, so I have to put my plug in here. And I say it for this reason. The history of Harwich was written in the 1890s. There's no consideration of what happened in the Industrial Revolution. The guy that wrote it was born in the 1830s. So he was living through all the age of sail, all the merchant mariners, all the growth of the steamship and our herring industry and cranberry. It's all that stuff is kind of incidental and anecdotal to a guy who was an attorney who was interested in kind of land ownership debates. So we don't have a clear objective understanding, and I think as a town, we ought to think about this, and I'd love for the select board to do it, because we don't even have any archaeology. And as far as I know, the only town on the Cape that has anything, there isn't any town on the Cape that has anything older than us in terms of evidence of continuous human habitation going back 1,500 years before the earliest pyramid in Egypt. So this is a long arc of human habitation. We're at the outer crust. We ought to be more mindful about where we are in that whole kind of level of stuff. This has nothing to do with you all, but I think it still has to be part of a future consideration of what the next LCP does. And again, I go back to this neuroscience business. There's a huge body of literature, and this is not new, and I'm honestly kind of surprised that the consultant didn't know about this stuff. For instance, classic planning, the whole basis of the neuroscience of well-being. What happens to us when temperature gradients change, when you detect a row of columns or what have you, what happens to your pulse? These are all part of what planning and understanding our physical environment is like. This urban experience and design, the whole thing about eye tracking, and when I say talking about the things that we've done, I would have to say we've done some great things in this town. And what happened in Harwich Port the last couple of years with kind of bringing everything back to the the street level, very little, no setback. I mean, I'm assuming that was an accident because we couldn't have planned it any better, because that is the stuff. It's actually evidence of kind of our intuitive knowledge of what should be done. But we should be able to reproduce this and duplicate these things. That's why we have so many people out there. And so this business of neuroscience, the human science of behavioral science and the human sciences have to be a part of what we do. And then the other thing is urban planning is not town planning. And I think I think the planning, what I see in the planning literature for my use in my board, it skews toward much bigger populations, and there are generalizations that don't fit. So I would like us to have, as again an appendix, the opportunity to triangulate between the contents of what you're developing and something that is kind of like throwing something out into the future where we can kind of pull together, okay, what is there that we can draw on in how eye tracking studies show in the development of, let's say, if South Harwich starts developing a village center, and how do we know that in terms of eye tracking that there's certain density of windows and the proximity to a certain surface to the walking area, there's some math there that we can actually work with. That's the hard science. Now, how we qualitatively encourage somebody to build properly and within the context of, let's say, what Harwich has always been, what we want it to be, and not necessarily become somebody else's suburb, which is what I see a lot of the literature from the Cape Cod Commission. They want us to be a suburb. I don't know. Do we want to be a suburb? I don't think so. So that's my little presentation, and I hope, oh yeah, here's the literature. And if anybody is interested in talking or thinking about this or conversing about it, I'd love to, because I feel like I'm probably the only one that's doing it, but I'm sure there are other people that care about it. Anyway, thank you very much, and I appreciate you
No, thank you, Duncan. It's amazing. I know, thank you. We've spoken about this at length, and I give you say it most eloquently, but certainly in this whole process of this, what you're saying is rooted in what the community is telling us, right?
Okay.
There are different ways of saying it. You're saying it from a very specific, academic and professional background, as well as your service to the town of Harwich. But what you're saying is what the community is saying to us too, is that Harwich is unique. So we've tried to put it in there, and certainly the focus of the village organizationally is a core undergirding of what's there. You're totally right in saying that we're held to, there's a certain amount of things we just have to put in there, and that's
Right.
why it doesn't, and it resonates with me how the state metrics kind of, cannot replace local knowledge, for example, like one of the things we had to sort of deal with in terms of community at risk that was picked up by the state metrics was basically at like the Stone Horse on 28 in Harwich. And I had to think about that. I'm like, well, that actually is not accurate. That's just because of a seasonal group that is using that as housing.
Right.
That then are picked up demographically, and that is not accurate. Where the very real discussion of North Harwich that has tremendous historical roots to communities of color and is not picked up by that. So that's where we are as responsibility, right? As people who know Harwich and live here to articulate that. We're trying.
Right. Well, and I think,
in it,
to your point too, it's like that particular, the Stone Horse issue.
Yeah.
That was under our purview over the course of 6 years. And one of the design criteria that was like essential was they had to break up these areas between the buildings. And there's like a lot of literature on that. You don't put like, especially given the use of it and the context and the hours of use and everything. And it was a COVID thing. The builder went ahead with just went ahead.
Yeah.
And we didn't have an enforcement thing. So these things happen. And
Yeah,
so,
no. And that's like, guys, we're very sensitive to that issue, but that's actually not where it is,
Right.
So, Brian has questions, and then we thank discussion from the committee.
Some reaction.
Yeah.
Number one, and I appreciate everything that you've put out there. I think great food for thought. On one hand, the LCP is, we never viewed it as a staple document. We've always viewed it as a living, growing document.
Okay.
And we put some energy into it to have it, what we used to call it governance, but now we call it.
Implementation.
Implementation.
Governance was too inflammatory.
But
Yes.
my point there is that it's meant to be evaluated and reassessed, and there's no reason that some of the things that you're talking about couldn't be woven in
Okay.
to help tighten
Right.
how you assess. I mean, we did some ratings based on qualitative view of value and difficulty.
Right.
And all we tried to do is say, we're gonna focus on things in the upper right-hand quadrant.
Right.
Didn't really try to attack everything with anything that's more finite. But
Right.
it doesn't mean that some of these things that you're talking about couldn't be enabled and added on. And this LCP can certainly be matured, and we don't have to wait for the next one to do some of these things. So that's one. I think it's whether it's obvious or not, maybe we have to write it to make sure that this thing is living. But the other thought is, how do you resource some of the things that you're talking about? Who does some of this work?
Right.
How do you fund it? Because it's not the average person that can actually apply some of these.
Well, this is why one of the things I want to do is issue a brochure or like a flyer or something like that that puts some of this stuff into context so that, just it has anything other than kind of like, it's not advisory or regular, it's just simply a resident's observations on where, we're in this peculiar place where we have this ancient town and we have this modern tech, and we're kind of like the tech and the digital knowledge has separated from us from like the intuitive things that make some of our cities, the town beautiful. And I think that fingertip feeling of things is kind of like hard to capture.
No reason that you can't start small and just, point that engine at a particular aspect of it. But I think you have to start small and build to the sensors that you're talking about, which I think are wonderful goals to have, but you've got to start somewhere.
Right.
You got to fund it.
Other feedback?
I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're asking us to do.
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
I have thoughts, but David, you go ahead.
Just put it as an appendix if you
Okay,
see fit.
Put it as an appendix.
That
Now,
deck.
When you show us the PowerPoint,
Yeah.
it's pretty much bullets
Right.
without much explanation.
Right.
So there are a number of phrases there that even though I'm a planner, I don't really deal with very often, and don't fully understand. When you made your comments to us, you gave us a much more detailed context that allowed me to start to understand.
You want a narrative? I'd be happy to do it.
I don't know yet, but
Okay.
I know I'm a bit wary of just putting in this PowerPoint,
Okay.
because to me, it doesn't
I concur,
point.
thank you for that. You know,
They're just prompts for me to
Yeah,
like.
yeah, of course, of
powerful
course,
storyteller.
of course,
And
of course, and that's
it's
that's how
impactful.
we
That's
connect is information. And I get exactly, and I think it's valid to include this information, and you are talking about maybe having a pamphlet or something. But and I think a lot of the spirit is in there in the plan as best we can. I
Right.
mean, we got to keep revising it, but eventually we got to finish this thing. So, some sort of appendix.
Right.
Yeah, that maybe is 2 pages or something like that. That's your best thinking, or however long.
Because
you
I
wanna make
started
it, you
writing
know.
up something up, and I
Yes.
figured the last thing you guys want is something else to read. I figured,
No,
honestly,
no, of course,
Yeah,
we're
but I'm- no,
conveying
I'm
this
happy. I've got
information.
it- I've got
But
the
I'm
start
just
of it.
thinking, yeah, if you've got an appendix, you know, I think it makes a lot of sense to put this, because you have this unique experience that we're grateful for. I think it would be wise to put in there, so hopefully.
Duncan,
so it
and I'm
could be
happy to
referenced.
synthesize it with you to align it to some of the things that we probably put in this 150-page document, and then you can say, this is exactly where we can start to tie it. And then
Right.
going back to Brian's plan around the implementation part, it's like, if we can start to keep that as not just a consideration while we start to think through this stuff and how we monitor and manage it afterwards, I think that'll be important.
It helps a lot to make it that fluid, living document
Yeah.
that without trying to foresee the future, we know that things are gonna change and change before this even gets out there very long. But it gives some point to think, thoughts about, with things changing so fast, here's some things to consider, and some of it's not really going back, but it's not losing, because we're in the technological age now, there's no
Right.
question.
Right.
And you look back at what the industrial age or the space age was, and we know where we are now, and you see now why some people were so frightened about what was happening in their time. But it usually turns out to be for the good,
right,
but we don't want to lose the past. We don't want to lose the oral traditions, the
I'd love to see
knowledge
us
of
kind
the
of
town.
telescoping as a
We need it all the
coherent
more.
series of generations. The
Yep.
layers make sense, where it's just this kind of, instead of like what we were faced with, for years,
Yeah.
dropping a, Ferrari red cinder block cube in some corner in like, Bank Street or something, people would be like, what?
Yeah.
But they do that in Hyannis and they don't care.
You
It's like,
gotta
we're
know
different.
what it is to know, you have to be able to articulate what it is to know that you protect it.
Right.
Yeah.
There was feedback from this side.
Yes, Mary Jones, we've never met.
Nice to
but
meet you, Mary.
I want to say that I have to really agree with everyone else. I can actually see what's going on as far as what your vision is. When I came on board, I think it was a year after you all started, so I was not aware of how the contract with Tag and Bond was put together. You had mentioned the contract.
Right.
This information that you presented would have been wonderful to be able to have put into the initial contract, because I feel that there's so much of the spirit that
Right.
Joyce had mentioned, that of what you're saying, that we really had to put in, that went beyond the template of our consultant.
Right.
And we had to really put that in there. But actually having a single-page addendum or something like that that does say, this is a living document, this is what we want to see, this is what the tools we have.
Right.
So this is not the end.
Right.
And that would be a nice
I think it would be
finish moving
awesome.
forward.
Yeah,
This is not
Duncan,
the
you could
end.
even
This is
sign it.
what we see.
Well,
You don't have
see,
to, but you
the
could.
great thing, but the thing is, like, the work has to function at the Commonwealth level. But my feeling has always been, it has to work for us too, because we're paying for it,
Yeah.
right?
But
I mean, it's like,
Let me just say though,
I think as a group, we really have put that forward. I
Right.
think in all of our thinking, truly trying to represent Harwich and the community and the residents here. But the other suggestion I was thinking, because of actually your PowerPoint, we have to be able to go out and speak to the community.
right,
So even incorporating some of your
right,
PowerPoint in those sessions that we speak with the community, in saying, this is what really the spirit of what we were trying to do, what we were doing moving forward, this is what has to be in there.
Right.
So that the best way is to educate the public on how these types of documents have to be put together. And I loved how you had for the objectives, from like you said, from a community-minded person, that I need to know what were the objectives and why
Right.
was it fashioned this way?
Right.
So I could see that. I don't know if anybody else
I
could see
just,
that.
I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but from the very beginning, we had voice of the customer
Right.
embedded.
Oh, I know, absolutely.
But, so what I like.
With the verbatims.
Okay,
Not
'cause-
customer, though.
Well,
so
voice of the
Voices
community.
of Harwich, yes.
So,
Big difference.
I know, my
I
consultant,
know, I
customer,
keep trying to
taxpaying
get this out of you for 2.5 years.
I'm a
You
male.
should have sat next to me tonight.
I'm a male. Well, the other thought is, how do you extend that listening?
right.
But it's got to be very tactical, I think. So, but is there something in there that you'd say, based on where we are in the community?
What
who we're
title are
working
you
with,
waving at us?
What department is going to do it?
Right.
I think it would go a lot further if you were able to say, ooh, in the next 12 months, while we're executing the first year of this plan, we're
Right.
going to apply a new set of sensors to see if we can bring a little bit more input into the validation of what we've accomplished and whether we reprioritize. So it's a process.
Right.
And I just think it would go a lot further if recommendations were fairly tactical for the next wave.
Right. Well, bringing this stuff to a tactical level, that's the important thing. And that's why I didn't think you guys had enough to do than having me like lobbing grenades over the fence, thinking, oh, look at this, and look at, like, no, you guys, you're busy.
Hey,
But-
This is supportive, we're all moving in the same direction.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
I think if we all look back, there might be things that we do slightly different to enhance hearing
Right.
that voice. We even divided the stakeholders or the,
Subject matter experts.
yeah, and,
areas.
you know, that could have been tighter. So, but if you apply technology maybe in a certain way and
Right.
sensing, maybe that's the way to
Well,
reach
I'd
more
love
of
to,
those.
I'd love to see my board get engaged more seriously with how to creatively use some AI product, whether it's a visual or semantic large language model, to do kind of what do they call it? Hypothesis analysis. So like, if we build X with all the variables, all the constraints that we put out there, and say, like, you know, do it with this variable set, and we have 3 variable sets. Which one, and then do the visualizations, and then allow us to work it, that we could actually do this in minutes as opposed to months. And I think that this is probably,
Someone's
a
gonna-
way of thinking about.
Who's the we, though? Who's the we?
Well, of the board.
Okay.
Or let's put it, the planning department. So
Okay.
the planning department gets whatever, there are 30 or 40 tools out there that could be integrated. And so you have you feed in your plans, you feed in your criteria.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be realistic. You need somebody skilled.
Right, well, it's not that complicated. I mean, this is like one level above dealing with a search engine. It's having a conversation where you have iterated,
Yeah,
probative questions, and you go down and down.
GPT,
Right.
we know some of the basic tools,
Right.
but it's the corpus of information you wrap around it. I mean, I'd be happy to continue to work on it.
So Duncan, I'm happy to explore it with Brian. This is what I do.
Oh, you do? Okay, well,
So,
yeah, so
this is
we're
what I
already
sell to
here.
enterprise customers. So if you want to have a further discussion, Brian's
Let's do it.
former IBMer, he knows his stuff, so I'm happy to explore it with you and your team.
Yeah.
Ed, go ahead.
So the book you've held up, which one?
Yeah, what are you
Oh, yeah,
waving
so
at
I was
us?
gonna say, I wanted to bring this in because this just came out. So you guys were doing like verbatims.
What is
it's
it? We have to see the
called
title.
Zaltman Metaphor Elicitation Technique. So in other words, this is the gold standard in marketing for integrating verbatims in market research, which is basically you're trying to figure out, so people tell you, I like this, and I like that, and I like this. And the state of the art in marketing and neuromarketing is essentially people tell you what they rationalize in their story of their kind of conscious life, but that doesn't reveal what people necessarily always want. You know, the perfect example is Henry Ford said, if I listened to what people told me, I would have bred faster horses. They can't tell you what they want, because what you want is accessed and processed in milliseconds, and what you say takes multiple seconds. So there's like 2 orders of magnitude between what you feel and what you can think. And so in marketplaces where these things work out, understanding how to draw out and exhaust people's rational and cognitive faculties, and then get down to metaphors which is what essentially, I like that feeling of, or like, what's the right way to, like, so I always associate Pepsi with my first date, or something like that. Then you have 5 people say, well, I met my husband, at his house, and they were having a Pepsi. It's like all these scenes, the metaphors will tell you the truth, not necessarily the anecdotes that you hear. So to me, this is always the gold standard of processing conscious data for unconscious desires. And I think this is where we see,
Yeah.
this
This is totally what we hear when someone says why they're, for lack of a better word, morally offended, viscerally offended by clear cutting, in Harwich.
Right.
And there's a lot of different ways of saying that,
Right.
but that's that gestalt of, and it can be historical, but it can be ecological, it can be environmental, but then it butts up with what, the practicalities of the law and the zoning and stuff like that.
I
That's
would
what we're
love-
trying to thread this needle in this.
Right.
in this
I would
plan.
love to see,
Yes.
as like a second layer analysis.
Yeah.
Of eliciting public opinions using images, and see what,
Yeah.
are there color constants, are there compositional constants, are there structural constants? Are there, all sorts of variables that we can say, oh, this is, and we might kind of be able to brush aside and see a very clear view of what North Harwich is to people that live in North
Well,
Harwich.
they're telling it to us.
Well, I know, but I'm-
But then right, but then there's conflict. with
Right.
this. Or why someone has a visceral response to say, a building project in Harwichport or something like that, without getting too.
But I'd be happy to
yeah.
produce, I really want to produce something that's of use to the community, and however you want to go ahead with this, I'd love to have input if somebody wants to be a reader, or, I'm just throwing it out there. It doesn't have to be part of what you do.
We appreciate you, we appreciate you so much. In the realities of the plan, because we're,
Right.
yeah, we're running out of time.
Right. Right.
And we're getting every last drop we can out of our consultant. Probably, with low-level reviews, I think we can make sure that the text is in the spirit of this and things like that. Probably the easiest way to integrate your, very real expertise in what you're articulating here is some sort of appendix. And I think that's valuable.
Do you want a 1-page, or a 2-page, or
Is there
10-page?
consensus about that?
I think 1 to 2 pages,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
about the storytelling too. That's what's gonna
If you,
hit home
I mean, you're a
most.
wonderful writer. If you give it can be easily, then we can say to T&B, put this in as an appendix.
Okay.
And then it will be there
And it
forever
allows us to build
in this
off of it.
document,
Yeah.
and it can be referenced and it's part of it. And, I mean, you can get all the credit and sign it.
I don't
You
care
can
about it. I
Duncan Berry,
don't-
West Harwich
I
if you
don't
want,
care.
but you don't
I
have
don't care.
to.
You don't have to put my name on anything. I don't give a damn.
I'm
Honestly.
teasing you. I'm teasing
Right, honestly,
you.
I don't give a damn.
I think
Yeah.
once, we're to take a look at the appendix
Yeah.
when that's written, and I
Yeah.
would love to see if we could tie it into how
Totally.
I think this needs to be managed going forward.
Totally, I feel like some of that is out of our control, but we can demand an appendix.
It's a record, well,
Well,
The only
yeah, a
thing,
revision
I wonder is, obviously with the quantitative, qualitative stuff and how the plan needs to align to the Cape Cod Commission
Yeah.
standards, does that pose any issues?
No.
No?
Yeah, and we've got a lot of it in there, but so please, we are asking you formally, we would love a 2-page situation.
Got it.
We're gonna have the, community feedback session in a month. And we're just kind of holding space for it all, we just got the most updated draft. We're just doing, the world isn't perfect.
Okay, right.
David, what you're gonna add, go ahead.
A lot of what we've tried to do, I think, in the actions and objectives is talk about building up the villages and the communities.
Yeah.
Rather than allowing sprawl to just continue, which is,
Right,
what the original zoning ordinance was all about.
right.
Was sprawl, but, as you go through hearings, and people say that's what they want, but you find a lot of people who would say, yeah, it'd be nice to have a fairly dense little thing close to the town. I'd never live there because I want to live out in the woods.
Right,
Right. In the sprawl, which is sort of, I don't know how we move on from that in terms of
Well, that's something that I think that the planning board is concerned with.
Your colleague behind you, too.
Yeah, because that was one of the things that we were looking at doing, I want to say 3 years ago, with John Eidman, was to kind of comb through and harmonize the language, because we have kind of, and it's natural over time that zoning and codes, building codes and everything kind of have this like crazy quilt quality where elements are brought in from Orleans and Ashtabula and, whatever, and so we have things that are solving problems that have all of a sudden we've created a stew with stuff that doesn't go together. And we need to, I think that would be a nice thing for us to request of the planning board, select board at some point, to see if we can actually kind of comb through and.
Please, join us.
Come on up.
We're all.
Come on up.
I am not as esteemed as Duncan, but I am also a member of the planning board.
I'm glad you're here. Welcome.
Yeah,
This is
and I'm
good.
here in support of Duncan, but my name's Ann Clark Tucker, and you guys have done a spectacular job for 2.5 years. My concern is, we capture it after you're done, and how do we bring it to life and make those changes? We've gotten all these discussions about character.
Yeah.
And character is something different to everyone. And then they ask us to make a judgment about whether something can go or not, and they're based on character, but the understanding is so broad. It's very hard to get anywhere on it. So I look at us as, kind of after you're done, hand us this gift, and we're trying not to have it be shelfware, that it's
Right.
never looked at again. Right? That there's very important things like the housing production plan, all of those things. It's like, now what, right? And how do we do this? And there is a big piece where we have to educate the public too. But as a planning board, we sometimes get stuck in the regulatory function, right? So we need to carve out time for more of this vision
Right.
and figuring out the crazy quilt and who's driving through which part of the crazy quilt to build something that nobody
Or-
ever anticipated.
Right.
Building it using 2 different levels of code and looking
Across.
for an intersection and say, oh, we're going to look at this language and this language, and we're going to do this crazy thing right here that
Yeah.
nobody ever intended. Like,
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think we just have to call it out too. I mean,
Yeah.
we're going from a little quaint town to, there's a lot of money involved in all these things,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
So when we get popular as a planning board, when people show up to our meetings,
Right.
it's something's going on that nobody anticipated, right? Otherwise, we're there every 2 weeks and nobody cares what we're
Right.
doing,
right.
right?
Yeah.
I saw that one.
Same with conservation.
Yeah, then it's standing room only at
Yeah.
2:04 and like,
Yeah.
And you
swinging
can't,
from the rafters.
and you can't educate the public when they're on fire about
Right.
something, right? So this idea about when people say character or detrimental to the neighborhood, it's like we need to figure out what
How
that
do you-
actually means. And to Duncan's point, in each different place, it means something else.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so we're thrilled you've done this work, but we really want to bring it to life rather than, just sit and approve things and read it out
There's an
loud.
implementation plan, which, and schedule, and it's so hard because you highlighted it, what we all know to be true and hold true as a community abuts the law, economics, and very much politics, and local town politics. It's impressive.
It does, but
Things I have thought would not be controversial in this process, like, got my socks blown off.
but I'm, but I'm optimistic
Yeah.
that we can kind of take educating public maybe in a different way. There are always opportunities, rather than people showing up when they're against something,
Right.
rather than for. I mean, we had our happiest meeting was when the group that has established the Grateful Mug in the
Yeah.
middle of
Yeah,
Harwich
which is so cool, by the way.
Yeah.
everybody showed up, and it's like, how do we do that more often?
Right.
Rather than,
Right.
that's the exception. And also explain to everybody on the, around the community, like you guys, we're volunteers. We're volunteers
Right.
Every 2 weeks, we're sitting there as
Right.
volunteers, right? And I'm thrilled to see them once, but,
Right,
come along for the ride.
right.
But the education, this is a moment when you finish and hand it off to us, that we can probably make something of that moment, rather than check the box that we've done what the
Right.
state told us they had to do.
So with the Grateful Mug, how many meetings did it go through?
2, because 1, we didn't have a quorum,
Right.
Okay.
which is, we're tight, because who wants to be on the planning
Best
board?
deal of iced coffee in town, by the
Oh,
way.
really? Oh,
$3,
good to know.
a giant iced coffee.
Giant iced coffee.
Lovely,
Right.
so
And
fun.
we also went through with the Board of Health and several others.
board,
Absolutely,
right?
but we were, I think, probably the last
Right,
stamp
you're the last
through.
one, yeah.
So, and it was very joyful, and the place was filled, and people weren't arguing with each other, and it was a wonderful,
It was
That's
great.
It was a
Harwich.
wonderful
People ask,
meeting.
what's
There you
Harwich? That's
go.
Harwich.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it just strikes me that it's a shame that something that is such a good idea like that took that big of an effort just to make it through the bureaucracy.
Well, we have other examples of the same thing, right?
Bureaucracy.
It took us forever to get a parking lot extension for the family pantry. We stumble on things ourselves. So, I mean, we can talk about everything that went wrong. I think I'm here in support of Duncan about what can we do better,
Sure.
and how can we take those nebulous terms of character and
Right.
what a village is supposed to be like, and put stuff in it that people can feel and touch and understand.
Here, here.
Madam Chair.
Right, David.
And then and I are vying for your
Yeah, well,
attention.
Oh,
because we're polite and we
I
just
want this done.
follow Robert's rules.
Usual, when someone asks, how are we gonna make this a living document, what are we gonna do when it's handed off to us? My usual answer is, go to section 7. We've spent a lot of time on the implementation chapter. We've got things where it can be tracked. Are we doing this? Do we take this off?
I know.
Do we have to-
But is it us at planning?
But that's,
Like
and
exit
it says
11.
who's the lead
Section
party,
7.
and you're on there a lot of times.
Right,
I'm so sorry.
Right?
You are,
right.
Let me keep going, let me keep going.
We're gonna have to give you a salary.
We asked for a budget in there for that.
Okay,
It's
right?
never, we got that.
The response is different for your question about character. First of all, you're gonna have to keep redefining that forever for whoever's sitting in the room there,
Right.
because you're not gonna satisfy them, so you just do the best you can. But
Exactly.
what we've given you in this document, even though it's an overlong document, there is stuff on history, there is stuff on each of the villages, there's stuff on environmental. There is a lot to pull from to say how any board, particularly yours, is going to interpret character. So we've given you a lot to work with, but it's still gonna be a case-by-case ongoing thing
Well,
to make it your interpretation.
so on the implementation, and thanks for putting our name on it, we've talked about having it as a regular piece on our agenda, that we, that we are always looking at it.
That's a great idea.
that's
But
where
then,
our-
but then we need, then we have to establish a joint task force with zoning and planning, which
Right.
we should do, right? And we want to do.
Yep.
Right? Because then you can say,
Yeah.
we're gonna take this document that you guys spent 2.5 years on, here's the implementation phase, and really get at the gnarly pieces. As a volunteer, I'd like to do more than just sign off on somebody's parking lot.
Right, right. Shape what the town feels like, where it's headed, yes.
Yeah, and are we gonna make everybody happy? No, right? But can we make some forward progress? I think yes.
I'm gonna add one more thing. Most of my planning career was in the state of Vermont. They made one huge change. They took the zoning board and the planning board and restructured it to a board of appeals, which combined zoning board and planning board regulatory. And the planning commission became not involved in regulatory at all,
Mm.
and only on the sort of stuff that Duncan likes to bring to us. So there, you're just more involved in the planning.
But where'd the regulatory go?
Well, it went to the single board, the regulatory board. Now, the trouble is, every time it brings up, I get pointed out that's Vermont, not Massachusetts, and you're never gonna get it through here. But there is a way that a neighboring state has found a way to allow planning boards to plan rather than to be bogged down in regulation.
Right. Regulation without enforcement. Yeah.
There's no
Which is
enforcement.
But I think you've made an important point, which is that The regulation needs to be tied to the planning, and in fact, that's the overarching reason for doing a plan in the first place, is to have some kind of guidance as to what you want your regulations to accomplish.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, I worked for my entire career as a planner too, and, I saw over and over again that there was this disconnect between the people who were thinking about long-term planning and the people who were sitting on the Board of Appeals and saying yay or nay to individual projects as they came through the door. And to try to get that more integrated into the planning board's work, I think could be really one of the most important things that you do.
Every organization is perfectly designed to get the results it's getting. Right now, we are designed to approve 7 to 8
Yeah.
family or housing subdivisions on 40,000
I know.
square feet.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's what we churn out because that's how the regulations are,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So, and taking on regulations and zoning is like a dangerous thing to do, but I think collectively, can we start, and make some difference, rather than just a discussion that we throw in at the end of our meeting or whatever else. We've had the discussions about clear-cutting lots. Do we have to clear-cut lots?
Yeah.
Right?
We've got a lot in there
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah.
and in an effort to often, we'll say suggest or consider, or just to try to recognizing this stuff is complex.
It is complex. I think we're not a meeting, right?
Yeah,
We're
here, yes.
I'm here in support of Duncan's
Yes.
position, but I'm also here to say, how do we, hand this off to us, and how do we not forget it after your 2.5 years' worth of work?
This could be a very naive comment, and I come from a naive space. What's that? I know
I'm
you-
ready to hit
And it may bear, having a deeper conversation outside of here, but is it possible to use some of this LCP as part of a fabric or a litmus to some of the decisions and the approvals you are making, so that we're living through the use of the LCP?
We can't.
No, but that's one of the ways to integrate it.
It
Is that
is.
you're making decisions and you're registering those decisions with an element of, it aligns to this
Right,
portion of the LCP. That keeps LCP in the discussion.
right.
It's just not we have to put it in a way that it's legal and enforceable.
Right.
See, I only worked in the
So you
private
want to,
sector,
you want to
so.
make your land use regulations consistent with the local comprehensive plan. That's the idea.
That's it,
Right.
yeah.
That's the idea.
And,
Right.
in this comprehensive plan, this is the first time that we've actually been in the midst of implementing a solid, clean water program in town, and several points through, we recommend that the zoning ordinance needs to be brought up to conform with that, so as things are developed, even though they may not have a sewer line in their street then, but let's not design the neighborhood in such a way that it's going to make it ungodly expensive for people to, because that's what has been done.
Oh, we have a limited use of, conditions,
Yeah.
and we've been adding that.
Right.
But some of to get the LCP to actually, start to work, we have to do this through probably this joint task force, and we have to get down into the weeds
Right.
of it.
Is there a way to almost create a little bit of a score, like a Consumer Reports kind of a score that says, hey, this is our decision, and it's for whatever reason, it scores 4 out of 7. We may have to do it for other decisions.
But we hate it.
Well,
We hate it.
Not that we hate it, but,
No, yeah.
but I'm just saying that it's another way to keep the LCP and all the work that we put in here alive. Some of the decisions may perfectly align with everything that we've tried to describe, the world that we're trying to build. I'm just wondering if there isn't some sort of qualitative it's still more qualitative than quantitative, but it represents as,
Well, I think this business of soliciting or eliciting feedback and verbatims from the public is something that we ought to do on a routine basis and track the tolerance over time of the population for certain things that we're looking at. So not only do we look at like a cross-section, but we look at it horizontally through time, like, oh, so there's a higher probability of people wanting to incorporate certain types of, regulatory elements, or a lower tolerance. We have to move the markers here. We should probably reconsider these laws. So in terms of gauging public opinion, those tools, again, that's going to be an AI thing, I think.
there's also alignment to the vision. I mean, we've tried to.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that I
Once
think
we
our
understand
vision
it,
is
so-
is gonna be a plastic evolving thing, and we need to, we have to like be very responsive to that, I think. As, as a town, as people that are serving on all these boards, we have to listen better, and we have to do a better job of pulling stuff out. So,
So we,
I know Bernadette is like dying over here.
Bernadette, it's your turn. Start talking.
I'm just, no, the longer I sit here, the better it is, because really, just 3 points. One, that, and it puts me in mind of the old firehouse project that has become what it's become because of collaboration among different groups. And having you here tonight is a joy, Ann. It really is.
It's lovely.
One of the
It's
best,
So fun.
I mean, we have fun meetings.
Yes,
as
but
you can
this
tell.
is
But
spectacular.
we,
Yes.
the collaboration here between us now, and even when we are no longer a thing, where we've intersected now, and I was gonna say, if it's possible for you to be with us at community engagement.
Yeah.
Where this town board and this committee are together collaborating to carry us into the future.
I think that'd be a great thing.
And I
You
have
know,
one
that-
other
that would-
suggestion. It looks like Duncan has some pretty good photos, so maybe we
Oh,
can
yeah.
steal some of his. We're still in need
photos
of
with the
photos,
appendix.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
here I was
Cape
tiptoeing, I
Cod 5
think, no more
calendar
than
that has
15
all-
minutes. I
No,
don't wanna,
gosh,
like,
no,
get in
no,
the
no,
way
no,
here.
no. The
No,
I
stars
feel
aligned for
terrible.
this.
It's like been an hour.
No,
I
it's
feel
great.
bad.
And very
When I-
It's great that T&B isn't here and they haven't given us a complete draft, so it's great.
Well, I look over I'm heading into my 4th year, which is nothing, I understand, in terms of our committees, right? But I look at what are the things I'm most proud of? The apartments over the fire museum. Yes, right? The apartments anywhere. Anybody that came with a 2-story building and wanted an apartment, they almost didn't have to sit down. We're like, yep, here you go, right? The ADU we were slow on. I was slow on because I was coming up the speed on, I didn't realize there was no enforcement, right? We were probably too
And
late.
tracking it and all that.
And we
right.
had no tracking. When I said, well, how many ADUs are there? Nobody knew. We're finally,
We're finally coming up to
we're,
speed.
yeah, we're finally keeping track. So I know we can take on too big a mission and then get nothing done, but can we do, pieces and parts, and can we maybe,
We should be dancing at least.
yeah, that joint task force, whatever, if that's what we need to do, how do we make that move? Because anything that comes out of that has to go to the town meeting.
Right. Well, let's
Right?
get you guys
No.
over the goal line.
Yeah.
Get it,
So
done.
please, any, I think, trans collaboration support is welcome, please. Our next, just, kind of what's coming on, to Duncan's point, what's coming up on our calendar. August 5th, it will be this format, is the community feedback session on the draft. And so we'll invite everyone, we use social media, every grumpy pants on the Harwich Old Timers is invited and everything like that, which that's really, that's
At
fun.
5 o'clock this.
5 o'clock this, anybody is welcome, and we welcome their feedback. Also, Select Board Chair Hal asked me publicly for their meeting, not a joint session, but their meeting in August to review the draft. We have offered them the 11th and the 18th. I haven't heard back which date. Could be a different date, it's a little bit at his pleasure. But any solidarity and collaboration
Yeah.
would be much appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah, if we get more members, we just
Yeah.
have to make sure we're not
Yeah, right,
violating
right,
anything. But,
right,
and the
right.
community feedback, just the challenge is right the time of year.
Oh, yeah, I know, I know.
No, this is great. So I rise in solidarity with Duncan. And, we accept the challenge to take the action after it. We're just trying to figure out how. And to your point, you know, because you can never just sit on one committee, you get put on another. I'm on the capital outlay committee. So it's if we need money, we got to be ready to ask for it.
Make checks payable to.
Right, yeah. But, you know, there's a cycle for that, too. So it's like, how are we going to get it done? You know, where do we, you know, and it's not always necessarily, forgive me, hire a consultant. It's not always the,
No, no, no.
Well, and I think the most important stuff is gonna be the stuff that we add to it. of Harwich.
It's the
that's gonna be
community, you know, and the fact that we have to look at each other in the eye.
Right.
The older I get, the more I realize, wow, this really keeps this, you know, we have to see one another.
Right.
Town meeting, ball
Right.
field, grocery store. Fascinating public discourse.
it is
Yeah, yeah,
fascinating. But, you
yeah.
know, at the meeting at the 204, our last one, I've had people come up going, I didn't know you were on planning. I was like,
Right,
where have you been?
right, right.
So thank you for the time.
Thank you for coming and
to-
being so generous to your time and
Yeah, yeah.
expertise. We're very grateful. Anybody else want to, before we free you out? It's a lovely evening out there. We don't
Yeah.
wanna be late for-
Last
Yeah,
thought
go ahead.
on making this living. I mean, this is a good start of this conversation, and it's gonna take a while to do that.
Absolutely.
So let's give some thought to, as we deliver this, and I guess someday we might actually get dismissed, right? Maybe.
We will, but that's what I was thinking is when
I'll
we
still
do,
drive over here the first Tuesday.
Yeah, I'll be like,
no, we'll come to the planning board and we'll support them.
I mean, the time we've done this, I've had 3 kids. Okay?
Wait a minute, you started
I
with.
started, one came out right before, but I interviewed before I had my first kid.
Oh, my God, that's
And I
amazing.
retired.
Been busy down there on
Yeah, you know,
Bay Street.
COVID, not a lot to do, joined the board, whatever.
We all
We
figured
welcome-
we were signing up for a year, not a selectman's term.
Right,
Really?
right, exactly.
In that spirit, though, we would welcome your thoughts as to how do we smoothly, you know, transition, whether it becomes maybe some brainstorming at a planning board meeting, or how, I
do
just
we-
think we
yeah.
need to put more thought to it, and I don't want to leave it drop, because I think it's critically important that we figure out how to really create the process that makes this a living document.
Do you all interface well with the planning department?
Oh,
Oh, gosh, yeah, Christine is
So
our,
let's figure
our,
out,
she's,
She's
we are
incredible.
so lucky to
Okay.
have Christine.
because then let's
Yes.
make sure that that happens in a way
Yes.
that works well with that hinge for
She has
everybody.
guided us with
Right.
her deft, experienced hands.
Because I think she can
Yes.
figure out the right way to make
Yes.
it work for
Yes.
these two bodies.
And we don't want it to go on a shelf. That's,
Right.
So nor do we,
That's
never.
one of the first things we ever said.
but,
Yeah.
but the handoff, right? How do we hand it off? and
How do we manage the handoff?
manage the
Integrate
handoff?
well with the planner. It's not so much that we have a planning department, really.
Right.
That's very accurate. She's been down one person for 3 months, too.
Has
Yeah.
it been that long?
It's 3 months,
But
yeah.
there's got to be a way to use it to make it front and center to conversations, to decisions,
Right.
to tracking. If you're not, I shouldn't say we, it's not, no longer our responsibility, but if that's not being done, it is going to go on a shelf.
Right, right.
Take a look at the implementation.
Section 7,
Section
to
7.
David's point, that's the
Love to
best one.
get your feedback on it, because that could weave,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, your appendix could be written as
Footnote to that.
influence to that, right, because that's where we
I
started.
will
to
email
describe.
you the link, so just so you.
I got it. I was
Oh, you
looking
got
at
it. So
yeah.
just so you know, because I had to be educated about this a little bit, the standard, and we'll see, this is what it is, it's gonna be, we have to educate around this. In 2025, what is coming to us? This thing, I mean, may be printed, but it's not anticipated that it's a printed thing. It's a Adobe document.
Right.
Right.
That we don't have particularly sounds silly, the software ability to edit. So like, I can't go and say, I
Oh.
don't like that sentence,
Oh, no.
I need to fix it. So that's why our revisions are kind of contractual and limited
Right.
to a point. And it's going to come as a digital thing, and it's cool, I mean, because you can Control F and search around it, and it's,
So this brings us to.
that's what it's gonna be.
We voted to approve it.
Yeah,
But it's, the editing is continued. Do we have to? do
Approve
we
it
have an-
again?
Do we have to, do we have to vote
I don't
again?
believe so, don't quote me. As
Okay.
I understand where we are in the process, and I'm not the procedural expert in this at all, is that we've got a draft. We're gonna get some community feedback.
Right.
We're gonna get the select board session. We
Right.
maybe have one big revision, that's why
Right.
I'm emphasizing the appendix. And then depending on the select board, if they wanna put it up for special town meeting for adoption. I think you're, on a regulatory standpoint, you've signed off, I think.
Right, because no substantive changes, right? They're essentially wording.
Yeah, it depends on how
inflection,
emotional you get about the wording, but yeah, yes.
Word-
yes.
No, but it's hard.
wording and layout.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes.
and layout, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that was my understanding, that we had approved a
And there was.
provisional,
Yeah.
Number of
Yes.
things, like there was no discussion of a capital improvement program.
right, right.
yet, But that's being brought over from the
From-
capital improvement.
I just don't want us to be, like, if we have to vote again, let us know, we'll get it right on the
We
agenda
won't.
and go.
No,
get through it,
I
'cause,
think
like-
you're spared,
All right, okay.
though your feedback is welcome. We
And
need
by
your
the way,
expertise.
this, whatever appendix should not be substantive at all, simply kind of projective. It's like a,
Yeah, no, we
you know.
appreciate it. No, it's
And,
a collection of
We do get a
knowledge,
fall
yeah.
town meeting, you know, it wouldn't hurt if, in a meeting or two ahead, if you guys voted to endorse it.
Right.
and
Yeah,
urge
yeah.
there we go.
approval,
That would, yeah, that would be,
That sort of thing.
that would be, and we don't know whether we're getting a special town meeting.
Yes.
No.
We, please, talk it up. Yeah, so.
No, thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
Oh, we
Really appreciate
appreciate
you
you
guys.
so
Thank you so
much.
much.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All
We're
right, keep working.
grateful for you. You guys keep up the good fight,
You only have 2 more
too.
hours tonight,
Yeah,
right?
go, go.
This is why I'm hard pressed about AI. We can't edit this document.
We can edit this time. We just need
We're
good
gonna
software.
All of our meetings, big and
Duncan?
small.
Every time we're in a meeting, I end while you're leaving saying, yo, we need to get together and just have a chat. So we'll never have connected. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night. Appreciate you so much. See you
We
later.
got a few days off.
Keep up the good fight. Bye-bye. All right. That was great. Go team. Good job.
So is that it? Or-
No, we have a cut. I know, right? Everyone wants to get out of here.
Conclusion.
So, we've got the draft. You can see in your email what we're missing, which is a fair bit. Know what to say. We're missing the prioritization table. We need more photos. We don't have the matrix photos timeline. We also need a PowerPoint and an executive summary, which,
And the capital facilities section needs to be finished.
I think it has,
Has it?
I think so.
Wait,
It's
am
a
I
lot
looking at the
bigger.
wrong one?
Okay, all right.
She
Um,
sent a new link,
There are also
Late today.
some other
Yeah.
placeholders
but I assume
where,
it's
the consultant has said that this has to be filled in. There's just a few of those scattered throughout.
I'm not gonna get too in the weeds about that because she herself is saying, I mean, that's a fairly big list of things that we still need from them.
I got one concern about what they have given us.
Okay.
I would like to see if my memory is faulty. In section 7, which is about the only one I have,
Another section.
David's bumper sticker, section 7.
I'm gonna make the bumper.
I just like to see specific suggestions and ways to get them done.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
first-
yeah.
Great.
So we spent probably 2 meetings on impact and feasibility.
Mhm.
1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 1. And in the draft a month ago, we still had a column for impact and a column for feasibility. So we could track the 4s and 2s throughout. And then we would get to the plan and mitigate, near term, et cetera.
Yeah.
The latest version of the plan has the plan and mitigate column, the near-term column, et cetera. But it's dropped out the numbers, the impact column and the feasibility column. For me, that has lost a lot of context.
I could be wrong, and you're welcome to engage her directly with email. Please do that. It, like,
I wanna see what
I interpret what she's saying, and maybe I'm totally wrong, is that she does not yet have the prioritization grid. Isn't that's what incorporates those numbers?
She's put the labels for where it goes in the grid in the document, but she's left out the scores. Is that what you're looking for, David, is the score?
The reason I like the scores is, to me, it makes a lot of difference if the impact is high and the feasibility is low, or vice versa. To me, that says a lot about how we think it really can work. So I don't like losing those two columns.
I think I agree with you. I think it gives a little bit more basis for why we called it plan and mitigate.
They had enough room for it on the previous draft, so it's not a matter of space.
Ask for it. Ask for it.
Figured it might be good to run a
You
budget.
you can include it to all of us, and Brian will chime in, and.
But I think you're saying, let's add 2 columns to the left of feasibility.
They were in the prior one.
They were, well, they're in the spreadsheet. Mary, they were in what you, remember when we left the last meeting?
The prior
You were going
version-
through to make sure everything was straight.
Yes,
And you gave it to them?
I gave it to
The prior
Christine.
version had lead, which is still stays in, impact, which has been dropped, feasibility, which is dropped, the number columns. Quadrant label has also been dropped, upper left, upper right. To me, that's fine, drop it.
Well, right, because this, the feasibility impact intersection is
Right,
the
that
equivalent.
takes care of that.
Right.
But it defines what near-term means. I mean, if I was just, I wouldn't understand any of that. But again, having a scoring
Without-
system that
right.
defines it,
That's what I'm trying to
that,
say.
Right.
that what needs to happen.
I'll send that to you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the format is what it is. The photos, I think, will get better. I expect a contract of this magnitude and a group of this size will sort out their placeholders. She has told us in email what we are still missing. Okay. I did want to, on the very first page, I'm open to this, but I actually think it's important because it's the introductory page. What is the consensus about the Harwich on the horizon?
I don't like that
It's
it's
a
behind
sophomoric design,
the
but
H
I,
needs
like,
to
am I
be in
gonna
front of the
torture them
dune.
about that or what? Yeah, we can.
Joyce, that was me sitting at home today.
It's woof.
I'm the artist, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I really don't like that. I think if the H was in front of the dune, it'd be all right,
Yeah, I kind of think it was clever if you were
but,
16, but.
yeah.
Necessary, I mean, it says right under it.
Yeah.
It says Harwich 3
Yeah.
times.
You know, you're right.
I wonder which
Just
planet it
strike
is.
it, just strike it.
Be
Put it
great if
off.
somebody wrote Nantucket.
Harwich.
Like, that's where Nantucket is. It's over
And
there.
then drop a pin here on Harwich, you are here. Because we are only 40 minutes from Nantucket.
Take out the
yeah, no.
Harwich and in very small letters, do Nantucket.
No, you know what, and this
That's a
goes
good
to, this
troll.
goes a bit to the stuff that I love listening to Duncan talk about, the neuroscience of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Harwich is not on the horizon. Harwich is here now, has been here, will be in the future, but, yeah, there's.
Okay, all right, good, all right.
I'm strike that
That
out.
was a consensus vote.
So are we voting that we are striking the
Strike
Harwich
it,
Horizon
just
sign?
strike it completely, it'll be much nicer.
Yes. Record it, lock it in.
I wasn't gonna say a word about it, I'm so glad that somebody else did.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
In the interactive side, I did put my opinion also as far as the wording,
Yeah,
which, again, having Harwich be squished on one page
Yep.
3 times,
Mhm.
I mean, it's redundant.
yeah.
So if they could just say, you know, the town of Harwich, local comprehensive plan update, and then whatever to say that it's by the local comprehensive
Mhm.
plan. I don't know if it's by the local comprehensive plan committee, something there. I just know the other towns comparatively did not have so much on their introductory page.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you take out the,
And I did
The
mention that in my
horizon
comments.
visual, okay.
You did.
Yeah, okay.
on the,
Did I say it nicely?
Yeah,
on the email that Joyce sent us,
I guess I did.
yes,
or
Sharon sent us,
Sharon
yeah.
sent us,
yes,
the link,
yes,
is that where you submit pictures?
no.
No, she wants those in Dropbox, which,
Okay,
I
then
am-
I'm not doing that. I can't figure out how to do that.
You can give them to me and I'll put them
I
in
have trouble
Dropbox for
with
you.
Dropbox.
if
I was
you,
able to put them on, but I didn't see.
I
them.
may.
Okay,
have
then
to-
I'll do
I
it.
find, if I have some, and what I was gonna ask down at the junior theater, they have certain, you know, shots of
Yeah.
stuff that they put up that they must have already vetted everyone and it's okay with the people in the pictures. So I will ask them about that for, the culture section, because I sent some to her, but she did have that concern about if you don't know who's in the picture, or if it wasn't okayed. But I just don't have any use for Dropbox, and mine's almost full, and they keep telling me that. And I keep saying, I don't care, and I get rid of some stuff. But when I went to try to join hers, it was telling me I had to get a new account and all this
Yes,
stuff.
I
And
had
I'm
the
like,
same thing. I
I'm
just
not
stopped.
gonna do that,
It
yeah.
was it was asking permission to
Yeah.
give her,
And for me to make a whole new,
I
so.
never did that.
Garrett's on the scene.
If
All
that's
right,
all
Garrett,
I
right.
can
Garrett,
sit, I can
it's
sit
the
and
under
do it with
50
you
crowd.
guys. If you,
Here we
as long as you have
It's
me in
good.
digital.
I'll just, well, I don't even have them in Dropbox, but anything I have, if I
Buckley
can,
Curran,
if I can just email things to you and you
He's
can
in on our
yeah,
list.
Buckley, last name Curran, Curran.
Oh.
Is he blowing me a kiss?
Yes.
It was me.
Buckley Curran
At Gmail.
email.
Okay, so clearly that was very effective in just a nice kismet in engaging with planning, which
That's
is amazing, which is really good. Because I do not know what the next 6 weeks will hold. Or 8 weeks.
Some of it is not in your control.
Yes, 8 weeks will hold. So we're gonna invite everyone for the next session. Any ideas on how anyone wants to format it, or like?
Invite everyone, what do you mean? by-
Everyone,
You mean like
the
the
whole
town?
town.
Just to
Okay,
promote.
so
This
community.
we're not going to have another committee meeting before that.
I don't anticipate.
Okay. Do we have a list of the schedule of regulatory board meetings yet to have us attend?
I'm not criticize yours because they're gonna start their meeting.
Which one would you like to go to, Ed? And let's find out where it is right now.
Well, I was, I had been to the water board.
Yep. Do you feel like we need to go back to water? She does very well by email.
Yeah, but she also doesn't really represent the rest of the
Okay,
members.
you wanna go to water? Yeah, let's go to town of Harwich.
That, I would like to hit some of the committees like the Energy and Climate Committee and the Bicycle Committee.
So are you volunteering to do all of those?
Sure.
Our public meeting calendar, so coming up. View all meetings, just because we're here and we can do it.
Oh, I'm chairing library tomorrow night, so I'll make sure to mention.
Nice,
my
thank you.
report and
Library will
invite
be
the library
done.
people.
Conservation Commission is tomorrow, July 2nd. Board of Health is July 15th. HDHC is July 16th. Conservation Commission is July 16th. View all meetings. These are probably just written on here as standing. I don't think everybody is actually on here. Because it's when you
Right.
post your agenda.
Right.
So if you go to the bottom, all right, the agendas and stuff that are actually posted. Look at us right here, doing that. Charter Commission, I don't think need to go to them. That's tomorrow. Conservation is July 2nd, as I said. Library, you've got.
Yep.
Planning Board is July 8th. I think we've referenced the Planning Board. Zoning Board of Appeals has bigger fish to fry than us on July 9th.
Cultural Council doesn't meet in the summer.
Okay.
And I'm officially, as of yesterday, no longer part of it, but I'll email the people on it and let them know for what it's worth.
Historic is July 16th. Conservation Commission is the 16th. This is who's posted. I actually don't see water.
Oh, they meet Tuesday morning.
Okay, I just don't see it
Yeah.
posted yet, so,
Yeah, that's easy for me to find.
okay.
I think they met last week, actually.
Yeah, they meet,
Are they a 2-weeker or a monther?
yeah, they meet, I think, every other week.
There you go.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
What are we doing at these meetings?
Sorry to interrupt.
No, we welcome it.
In other words, if we're going to the meetings, what
Well-
are we doing there?
sort of reaching out and telling them that, you know, the draft is either done or soon to be done. And, you know, telling them that we'll be having a townwide meeting to go over it and, ask, you know, that they review it.
I think this format here, I mean, this was not a setup, this was organic, right? This is in a, you know, like a little bit of a meeting of the minds. They understood the assignment of like, we're not gonna pest you about the, you know, wording of the sentences, but
Yeah.
some of it's education. This is what it is, this is the document, we hope to adopt this in the fall.
So do we need to get on the agenda, or are we showing up and just making comments in public comments?
Ideally, I think you could be on the agenda. I don't view this as overly, we've been at this for so long in such a public format, but we are asked to do it.
If they have public comment on their agenda,
Yeah.
that's probably sufficient. I don't
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, you know,
get on everybody's agenda.
it's like the water board, they're fairly formal in how they set up their agenda. And so it all
Yeah.
has to be on it. The bike committee is, you show up and they just sort
Yeah,
of talk.
but if the agenda has a place for public comment, that's all you need, you know, because it could delay things by trying to get on an agenda.
Right.
Last meeting I was at, they talked a lot about, some of the guys who bought new electric assist bicycles, and that was the end.
That was the meeting,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Any socialization, I think, is good.
okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to be away on the 5th of August, so I'm not going to be able to be at the big public meeting. But I could try to get on the Concom and Board of Health
It would be amazing, Margot, thank you.
agendas.
That'd be amazing, thank you.
Okay.
To let people know where this is, we just send the link that
Yeah,
Sharon gave us.
yep.
No.
Supposedly. I might play around with it a little bit. I haven't started to play around with it now. Can I comment? I think I can comment.
Ooh, if we're sending it, then are we sending out a document that people are seeing commented?
There are two different
So
ones.
they say this is okay. You know, it took us a long time to get there, but
Okay.
this is what we got. Yes.
Okay.
Margot, you said Concom and
Board of Health.
Board of Health, and Ed said water and bicycle?
And energy climate.
Okay,
Is that one committee?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's, because there's a fair amount in the plan.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Yes, Mary?
A couple of times you were sharing for a short PowerPoint, just for
It-
bullet points.
It's acknowledged in the email that we do not yet have it. Yes,
And
yes,
I'm just wondering if we had something like that, but
Yes.
maybe just
yes.
an email from you providing bullet points so that anybody goes, we all are consistent in hitting those points. Would
Oh,
that
say
be
what you're gonna
helpful?
say at this point. Three and a half years,
That's
three
right.
and a half, however long we're doing it. You're gonna be great.
It's all interpretive.
My guess is that most of these boards are going to listen politely and
Yes,
say, thanks
yes.
for touching base.
Yes,
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
yes, yes.
And that's,
yes,
you know, that's primarily the intent, is just to touch base.
Yes,
Because
yes.
I know at a certain point, we were scolded for not
Correct.
touching base. And,
Correct.
you know, now that we're at the point of having the draft done, I thought, you know,
Yeah.
So you may be scolded again whether we touch base or not.
Correct, absolutely. I expect to be scolded, just
So
for
do you-
breathing.
I keep-
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
I keep hearing, you know, we keep referring to it as community engagement too, so
Yeah, yeah,
do you
yeah.
want me to send something to the Chronicle to put into community news
Sure.
or
oh,
something?
yeah, 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 yeah.
And
And
mention
I'm
in
re-
it
yeah.
that you can access the draft
yes,
on the website?
Yes, yes. I
Because
will
if you
distribute-
try to
yes.
put that link in the paper, it's not gonna be a hot link anyway, and,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will distribute this far and wide on the socials.
and socials, yeah,
Okay.
I will
Okay.
too, I'll put it, I still have control of the cultural, council one, so I'll put it on there for what it's worth.
So we're talking about sharing the version that Sharon sent today. right?
I'm not saying, no, I'm not gonna put that
Yes,
link.
so it should
I was
be a
gonna say go
living,
to the-
it should be, you know, again, all of this is deeply imperfect and flawed, but per her email right now, here's the attachment, a link for your review. Add your comments and collaborate with others in real time. So, this is, yes, this is what they're asking for comment on.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
Garrett, you can collaborate here. I would understand this as kind of a cloud-based thing, that if Garrett writes boo and I write boo back, you see both.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yeah, okay.
But it's missing some key things, like,
Correct.
Correct, it hasn't been fully updated.
Yeah.
They're working offline off of our comments on another version, and then they'll re-upload it
Correct.
at some point.
Correct.
And that link may change, like the link, you remember how we were having
Yeah.
issues with the survey? They might just put it in there, and then all of a sudden, people are accessing the most updated link, and the comments are gone. And they're
Right,
like, where are the
right,
comments?
Right.
So just keep that in mind, but the two links, both of those links that we were provided are on our website.
Yes.
So anyone can
Yes.
access those at any
Yes.
point in time.
Yes.
And that's all I'd refer to and send.
Yeah,
it.
just refer to the,
You know, it's, for the general public, that's gonna be real dense and they're.
Yeah,
gonna-
okay,
So,
yeah.
so on this committee's,
Website,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
okay.
Correct.
I mean, as far as.
Christine
putting it
has
into
done this very
print media,
diligently
I think
behind the
that's
scenes with little fanfare.
sufficient.
Okay.
She's done a really good job.
Okay, good, all
so
right.
for August 5th,
Yes.
how do you want to run that meeting?
Well, let's, in our remaining few minutes, and then bust everybody out into a nice evening, what's the best sense of it? So we're gonna invite everyone. I mean, I don't think, like, it's gonna be beating down the doors, but we'll have
you
the
should
true
put,
believers.
it's related to Sunday school condos.
Or
Yeah.
or Pine Oaks
Pine Oaks
Village.
Yes, it's both, it's all of those
No,
things
but
are in this.
seriously, if you did, then
It
we'd
is,
have a fire code issue and then
it
we
is
won't be able to
related,
have
but
the
we'll
meeting.
let people
Great
connect
point.
those
That's-
dots.
This comes back to Mary's comment. I think you have to have the PowerPoint. Because you have to walk
Okay.
through some structure
Yes,
to elicit
Highlights.
feedback.
fair,
Yeah.
fair,
You
okay.
can't go through this time.
So when do we,
For the public meeting.
For the public meeting,
Yeah.
so I would anticipate that, I mean, T and B should be able to come up with that before August 5th.
I was expecting it tonight.
Yeah.
Yes, so I will.
did
do
they
that.
give us a new reframed ETA for maybe when we would see the
No.
okay, all right.
Hopefully
Because
before.
that's the thing, it's
You
like,
see what I see.
yeah,
Sorry to be sarcastic.
I will send you an updated version. I still owe you a PowerPoint and potentially an executive summary.
okay, so I will respond back to that tonight, so you don't have to be the bad cop.
Thank
So
you.
I have to.
No problem.
Yes,
Next
Ed,
week.
and then Mary.
That was
Yeah.
I think
mentioned PowerPoint.
some
Yeah.
people, we still.
Okay,
Very
so
few.
we'll give a little executive summary situation, and then,
And then I think you're looking
Take
there should be
comments and
content in it.
Yeah.
Should be vision, there
Yeah,
should be
yeah.
the highest level
Yeah.
view of how we
yeah,
plotted things. There could be a page on each of the major sections, but no more than about 10 pages.
no,
Yeah.
And then the detail is in the link that they would have already had.
yeah.
Um,
Open comment, I would imagine.
Well, yeah.
What do you think, like, you wanna time it? I mean, I can't, like, say we have a ton of people here and you're like, ooh, these personalities. What's a 5-minute comment period each, or what's the
Yeah.
consensus?
You can go around the room and everybody introduce themselves.
3 to 5, yeah,
3 to
I
5
mean,
minutes.
maybe we pack the room, but maybe it will just be us too. 3 to 5
Yeah.
timed,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And, and it's comment and questions.
Yeah.
They may, they may have a question that they want us to respond to.
Yes, and I would love for you all to, I mean, you guys all have such, you know, we're a pretty well-oiled machine. Whoever's best to answer the question can answer it.
You're doing great, Joyce.
No, I don't want to. I'm just the punching bag for the select board. I'll take that role.
I watched that whole.
I did
Lord.
too.
A nomine Patri, Filii, et Spiritus Sancti.
Amen.
I needed an exorcism after that.
It's fine. It's
You
good.
did
I got
fantastic.
Great.
big shoulders. I can handle it. Go ahead, Mary. What were you gonna say?
Bring chocolate.
You and Bernadette touched on it, but for the August 5th meeting,
Yes.
barring any kind of fire code problem, how are you going to advertise for this? We want to get as many people, even online,
Yeah,
to join and participate.
yep,
So I didn't know if possibly, because this whole process started off, let's say, with our community meetings.
yeah,
With the flyers and the logo,
Yeah.
your voice, your
Yeah,
Harwich and
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
So now it can come full circle with the
Sure.
same type of marketing strategy. Maybe they'll relate it back,
David,
maybe they'll recognize it.
Mary, you love a flyer, do you want to put a
But
flyer?
I'm thinking just simply that logo, or
Sure.
something that ties it back, that, remember those meetings you went to?
I
Well,
can
here
use
it's
your-
coming
We're
into
back.
this.
I can use your
Yes.
great visual, I mean, I'm showing my millennial, right at the cusp, born in 1980 age, but like, to advertise it, put it on the Old Timers, Harwich, but, you know,
But
like,
even
if
it's
there's
put
other
in
way.
In the Chronicle,
Yeah,
if it's just
that's great.
mentioned,
That's-
I'm afraid.
that's what I
that
already
it's
said I
overlooked
She's,
by
she's,
the
on-
other.
she's
I already
on
said
the
I was
Chronicle.
doing that, yeah. I
I'll do
just-
the socials, if
Yeah.
you wanna do any
I've just-
flyer.
And anybody that has their own
She wants to have the
socials.
unified, I think what she's saying is she wants.
Use the graphic, I will use the graphic,
What's the
Just
graphic?
the
Well,
icon.
that won't happen in the Chronicle, it'll just go into community.
but I will use the graphic.
Community news.
Unless
I will
Bill
use your
wants to
graphic.
Give us a
do
spot.
a story on it or something.
It's just to tie in that we're still continuing, with all those meetings
Yep.
you went to. This is the end result of it, or nearing.
We're coming
that.
close, help us finish it up.
Right, right.
Let's get it over the finish
Um,
line.
Over the line.
What's the it seems like we need two things from Ty and Bonds sooner rather than later. One is the PowerPoint presentation, and the other is the executive summary.
Yes, I will note, just here for the record, of this, and potentially an executive summary. And I think Christine and administration is well equipped to handle some of this.
Okay, well, the reason why I mention it is that it would be nice going to the regulatory boards to give
With an
them something
executive summary.
shorter to look
Right.
at.
That was why, that was the first thing
was
we
the
ever talked about,
intention,
because a
yeah.
lot of people are not going to
No, they're
go
not.
through it all. You have to have a
Mean 152
synopsis.
pages?
Yeah,
That should
Why would-
be done
yeah.
already.
Right.
So, I mean, it seems like,
Feel free to ask for it.
I mean, wasn't that one of our deliverables in our contract?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
And I think
It
the
was-
executive summary and the PowerPoint are very closely aligned,
They are.
if not
Yeah,
the same
because
thing.
you-
I have
summary,
faith in
synopsis,
Christine
you
and
make bulleted
administration for
things like Duncan did on
feeding
the
this
slides
drum.
from that, and there you go.
I will, when are those, or is it next week those meetings were, that you were hoping to get that by?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to call and see, you know.
I will follow up on that.
Tomorrow is definitely
I will follow
not
up on the
day.
email tonight,
But I'm
because you
gonna
said mid
try to
next
go.
week we would get the matrix in the updated version of the LCP. And she said, and hopefully an executive summary and PowerPoint.
Potentially.
have to be-
Potentially,
Potentially.
Those have to be
Yeah.
expedited.
yeah,
Those are-
so, I'll just say, hey, we're in the, yeah, I'll respond to it.
We're
Trace.
so,
Okay.
Thank you.
We're taking the show
turn
on
around,
the
it's
road,
gonna be
and we need,
August 5th.
We need collateral, hook us up.
Yep, sparkles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sequence.
What are you doing on the 4th of July, Ty and Bond? PowerPoints.
Any other new business or anything we didn't cover?
I think so.
Get a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
I second.
Any discussion?
Second.
Nobody's participating online, so we can do it by voice. All in favor?
I.
Aye.